Howdy. You know, I have seen a lot of Deltarune runs, just an absurd amount, but there's one line of dialogue in Castle Town I have never seen someone find, and to this day I still cannot find anyone discussing it. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised. Toby hides a lot of little events and dialogue bits in his games, but Castletown in particular has so many of them, I can almost hear you guys guessing things already. Is it Sham, you may ask, and that's a fair guess. Sham does have dialogue for a pretty specific case in which you have beaten Jevil in Chapter 1, but didn't load the save when you started Chapter 2. I believe this is so that people can go back and retry secret bosses without having to restart the entire game just to get the items in the later save files, but since that's a catch-up mechanic, I feel like it's at least somewhat known, so no, that's not the most obscure. Then, surely you mean the secret Ralsei dialogue. When you hug the dummy at the beginning of Chapter 2, Ralsei blushes and implies that he knows you did that despite not being in your party. But since most people don't talk to the NPCs multiple times, the majority of players seem to miss that. But I do see this brought up quite a bit when people are discussing why Ralsei seems sus in Chapter 2, even though Susie also has dialogue suggesting she was spying on you with Ralsei when you hugged the dummy. So if people are discussing it, obviously this can't be the most obscure line either. Now that I think about it, I guess that means this video is going to make this retroactively not the most obscure? But whatever, that's Future Bread's problem. What is the most obscure line in Castletown, currently? Well then, I hear you say, surely I must be referring to the dialogue in the cafe then. I did mention last video that you can place your recruits at these tables and get a lot of different dialogue based on configurations, such as this interaction showing Hathy and Head Hathy enjoy each other's company, or this one showing the same for Rabbik and Swatchling. This sort of thing is good for theory crafting, and if we dig a little deeper, we can also find this secret dialogue for filling the place with butlers, and thereby turning it into a butler cafe, which is oddly specific, but whatever. If I had to pick the most obscure one in this room, it would have to be this interaction here, which only occurs if you place wire near Head Hathy, and then shift it to the northern table, causing it to glare at the new pair from across the room, like it's bitter that someone else gets to enjoy Head Hathy's company. I cannot wrap my mind around the fact that Toby put this much time and coding into this interaction, but didn't put special dialogue for following Task Manager's suggestion that we turn this place into an animal cafe. Like what? I can't even. Regardless, this one is on the wiki, so even here, with 72 different possible arrangements, this is still not the most obscure line in Castletown. And no, I'm not referring to a line from some secret hidden recruit either, because the only prize you get for trying to talk to Spampton at this table is the world's least glitchy looking soft lock. Or, not? So enough teasing, what is the one line in Chapter 2's Castletown that I've never seen another player get? Okay, bear with me. In the east side of town, there's a golden door with a Bloxxer near it. If you're doing a pacifist full recruit run, they'll have like 4 pairs of pants and say they've been training. However, if you kill or fail to recruit Task Manager, it will actually create this very specific scene here, where the other enemies are wandering around in a circle. It seems like without Task Manager to keep them in line, they become strays and seem to lose their sense of direction. If you talk to this Bloxxer, however, they seem to have a more optimistic outlook on the situation, because they'll say,
"These animals are stray? No, they are practicing a special loneliness style, just like me. Lone wolves have to stick together."
I believe this is the only time the game will play that howl sound effect, so if you were holding down C and missed it, then, I'm sorry to say, you're gonna have to restart the entire run and, nah, I'm just messing with you. If you leave the room and come back, it will refresh the dialogue. What an oddly specific Easter egg to include, especially when there's so many little decisions pushing the player to pick one of the 2 extreme ends of the recruiting spectrum. This can also cause the tiny car to despawn, and I can't decide if that's to limit the number of sprites being animated here, or if it's just a case of so few people seeing this cutscene that they just never noticed in big enough numbers to report it to Toby. I tried looking into the code to figure out why this happens, but nope. Anyways, you may now be wondering, If the only requirement is that we miss Task Manager, then why has this not already been discovered by Snowgrave runners or murder owners? I mean, it's not like we can kill the Bloxxer, right? And that's an excellent question. It turns out, if you fail to recruit any enemies at all during Chapter 2, this dialogue doesn't occur. Instead, he'll skip straight to the second line here about building a training dojo for introverts, and I can't figure out if this was intentional or not. Also, for some reason, you can still get this dialogue even if there are no animals here at all? That's pretty weird. I mean, there are way more common routes that Toby didn't initially make dialogue for, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. But yeah, I don't know what to make of this. I know pacifist and genocide are the two most objectively interesting routes in Undertale, but I'm a little sad to see how often this overshadows the neutral routes, because there's a lot of genuinely compelling lines, cutscenes, and even entire stories tucked away in the neutral pathways. And when I think of Toby's comments regarding Deltarune's ending, and his fear of Undertale overshadowing his newest game, I kind of see why. Like, cards on the table here, I only learned about this because I got curious about this sound effect in the game data. There could be entire pages of dialogue I've never even seen, just because neutral routes of Deltarune are so uncommon. And yet, I get why people do this. You know, with 7 whole chapters, no one wants to make it to the end of their decades-old 90-hour journey, only to discover they're locked out of the ending they want by some tiny little decision they made in Chapter 2. So when Toby says there won't be 3 diverging endings in Deltarune, I kind of believe him, because part of me thinks that simply having a genocide route and a pacifist route detracts from our ability to really experiment with the morality of these games. Does this mean our choices don't matter? No, I don't buy into that at all. I think that a bit like Kill or Be Killed, the game is basically setting up that expectation, specifically to subvert it, but in little ways, similar to the many variations in Undertale's neutral run. But I can't really blame people for thinking differently. After all, Deltarune starts subverting those expectations much later in the game than Undertale did, and the game itself really does seem to be pushing players towards the 2 extreme ends of the spectrum, especially in Castle Town, with the line about Newbert, Sweet Cap and Cake's shop, and all the other little variations that depend on a fully recruited town. But personally, I find this story to be more surprising and more engaging when the consequences of our actions shape our world organically instead of moving us along what feels like a specific, predestined path. I dunno, what do you guys think? Should Deltarune have 3 major endings? Have you seen some rare piece of dialogue that's exclusive to one of the neutral routes? Let me know your thoughts down below, and until next time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Hyperlink Blocked.